In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found no proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson. This week on the show, Owen Kingston and Chris Stiles of Parabolic Theatre in London are here to talk about the new season from Parabolic, Make, Do, and Mend, and the new home of the company, the CRYPT, in London's East End. Before we get into this week's interview, however, I want to just do a quick reminder. The Los Angeles Immersive Invitational is coming up next month from our friends at After Hours Theater Company. And indeed, we're helping out both ourselves and the folks at the Immersive Experience Institute, who are also ourselves. The Invitational is a 48-hour film festival style event where multiple teams playfully compete for bragging rights as they craft immersive experiences out of thin air. This year's Invitational will feature up to 8 teams in competition starting on the evening of Friday, May 13th. Wait, we're doing what? And culminating in performances on Sunday, May 15th at the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles, who is our gracious host for this year's edition. We have some amazing judges coming in to order up everything. And there's some really cool teams that are already signed up to take part. But you, dear listener, you and yours could also take part. There is a sign up right now that is still open through Monday. There's a few slots left. And we're looking forward to seeing all kinds of folks take part in this year's Invitational. Once again, the dates are Friday, May 13th through Sunday, May 15th, when things get shown off. And folks won't know everything they're going to have. Think of it as kind of like almost like a cooking competition show. My preference is Chopped, so think of it like Chopped. You'll get your mystery basket, and hijinks ensue. It's a lot of fun. maybe the most fun you can have doing immersive. Maybe. It's a lot of fun. All right. Again, the sign up is live now. You can find that in the show notes. Also want to thank our latest backers, Megan Carroll, Austin Grossman, and KJ. We're currently standing at 370 backers and at $2,330 a month, meaning we are just 30 backers and $170 away from our next two big goals, being 400 backers and the $2,500 a month marker, which is our halfway to sustainable marker. Really would love to get there. So we're going to do a big push next month about that. I am off to the Without Walls Festival this weekend. So if you happen to be in San Diego, I'm going to be there on Friday and Saturday, checking out a bunch of the work. If you see me there, wave hi. I've opened up a section of the Discord for those who might be around. So also just give a wave, let us know, and maybe we can pass each other in the hallways, as it were. It's more of a courtyard than hallways, really. Anyway, I hope to see you there. There's a lot of interesting work on the slate, and we'll be back next week to talk all about it. One stop back in the podcast feed is a fantastic episode of the Review Crew. Shelley joins us from London. I wasn't part of it. That's why it's so fantastic. Shelley joins the crew from London talking about Doctor Who Time Fracture. Brianna Rokes, who's one of our LA correspondents, comes in to talk about the Bridgerton experience here in LA, and the whole thing turns into a big conversation about branded experiences. Laura Hess is in the mix, and Kevin Gossett leads the discussion. Really, really good episode. If you don't make a habit of listening to Review Crew, I encourage you, go back and listen to this one. It is totally worth it. Also, there's one interview this week, so you're probably fiending for more pod. It's waiting for you. The pod is waiting for you. And now we're going to get into that interview. Parabolic Theatre, whose work includes the no-pro favorite The House of Chenchi and the acclaimed For King and Country, this season has opened CRYPT, a brand new dedicated immersive theatre venue in the heart of London's East End, with an opening season of work titled Make, Do, and Mend, a collection of wartime-inspired immersive pieces. But that's not all. They also used the CRYPT to stage productions from other companies which were meant to run at this year's cancelled Vault Festival. Joining us today to talk about the CRYPT and the current season are Owen Kingston. Hello, Owen.
Hello, I'm Owen.
He's the artistic director of Parabolic, and Chris Stiles. Hello, Chris.
Hi.
He's artistic associate of Parabolic Theatre, and Chris is talking to us right after a production of England Expects, which will end its run this weekend. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure.
All right, and thank you for talking to us in the middle of the night there in London while it's sunny and bright here in LA. Before we get into specifics, was having the CRYPT become a venue that would be open to other companies other than Parabolic always part of the long-term plan for what you had set up? Or is this a shift due to the pandemic? Everyone's favorite nemesis.
Yeah, it was always a longer term plan, although we didn't know we were going to get the CRYPT until the pandemic had already started. But I had wanted to open a venue that could both be a home for our own work and a receiving house for other immersive shows. I'd long wanted to do that. When we were offered the space in the middle of the pandemic, we were initially offered it just as a storage site for all of our gear. When the pandemic started, we had to put everything into storage, and we'd had an enormous old gymnasium that we'd been given for free, waiting for it to be knocked down and turned into luxury flats. And we thought we'd have that all the way through the pandemic, and then about halfway through, sort of around about Christmas time 2020, we were told we had a couple of weeks before to vacate it, basically, because it was going to get demolished.
Yikes.
And around about that time, I got COVID as well, and that was an absolute nightmare. And someone who'd done a lot of work for the company in the past, her mother was the vicar of a church in Bethnal Green, which had a CRYPT that had just become empty, and they invited us to sort of go and have a look, and said, well, they were happy to house all of our gear through the rest of the pandemic until we got out the other side of it. And then at some point in that process, we started having a conversation with them about turning it into a venue, because I remember walking in there for the first time and thinking, this place is just really cool.
That's got to be one of the best things, Owen, about immersive, is that something that's a storage facility for other people is like, this isn't storage, this is a performance space. What are you talking about?
100%. And it just seemed like too good an opportunity to pass up, really. And there was a lot of legwork to do. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to kind of get it to be able to legally turn it into a performance space. But we had the sort of the tail end of the pandemic to do that, and it's all sort of coincided at the right time that we've been able to get our ducks in a row and be ready to open now, which is really cool.
And how, not to spring this one on you, but about how long of a lease do you have on the space? Are you going to be there for the next couple of years, pretty much guaranteed?
Yeah, I mean, we've agreed with the church, because we everything's very uncertain. Like, audiences are coming back, but it's we're not quite at the place where we were before the pandemic in terms of numbers of audience, and people are still quite cautious about COVID, and rightly so, really. So the agreement we have with the church is that we've got it for the year, so that we can try it out, basically, and see if it's see how viable it is, and will audiences come to that bit of Bethnal Green, and will we be able to find enough work to program to sustain it, and I think in that year we'll know by the end of the year, I think, whether or not this is something that is worth going on for longer, or whether it was something that was good for time but probably doesn't have legs long term. So the option is there, and obviously it would be really lovely if it takes off, and the potential is there to be there for years to come, which would be great.
Chris, what's it like playing in the CRYPT?
It's amazing fun. Not only just because it's a beautiful space in its own right. We've got lovely bare brick walls dating back from the Victorian era, and it's had different modifications during the 20th century. So there's loads of history in the place. But it's also, particularly now that we've been using it for performances and having other companies come in, it's becoming to feel a lot more lived in and homely. It definitely feels like a space to be productive and creative, which is excellent.
And for an underground space, it's relatively clean as well. We've performed in some horrible venues. When you're looking particularly for underground spaces that have that air of mystery and creepiness about them, often married to that is just a sort of nasty kind of dampness. It doesn't have that, which is good.
Well, not every crypt dweller, maintains over the decades, a proper space. So you seem to have found a really fastidious vampire or ghoul, who moved on to a better flat, like good for them, COVID opened up some opportunities for our undead. When you said it was like recently available, I was instantly went to like, what was in there?
When you can't make it up, really. It was
it's a crypt. What could have been in it?
What was there? It was a pipe organ building company. So the sort of organs that you get in old churches.
So a Phantom of the Opera was down there. That's
kind
great.
Of, yeah, kind of. And we've got loads of these weird bits of wood that do something for pipe organs. I have no idea what they do.
Just a little graffiti that says Christine over and over again.
They obviously this company went bust over the lockdown. Clearly, something about the lockdown dries up the demand for pipe organs. I don't know, but we were the fortunate beneficiaries that they'd been renting this crypt off the church literally for decades, and suddenly they were gone, and the church didn't really know what to do with the space. So we were just in the right place at the right time.
If only could use the Phantom music for this, but I get dinged on YouTube, I'm sure. Okay, so back on script for a second here.
Yeah.
In the announcement about the crypt, y'all mentioned Parabolic benefiting from the collab factory existing in your early days.
Yeah.
So is this something you see taking a similar role?
I hope so. I mean, I don't think anything's ever going to replace the collab factory. It was a pretty special place and a very special time. I mean, I think, I'm not 100% sure. It's very difficult to be 100% sure because I haven't got eyes all over the world, but I think it was the first dedicated performance venue for immersive theatre that would receive different productions.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And it opened in 2015. So maybe there's a venue out there that predates that. I don't know, but certainly in London it was the first. And I was fortunate enough to manage it for a time. I first met Bertie back in 2016 when he was just tearing his hair out as a one-man band, trying to run collab theatre productions and keep the factory working as a venue. And in that time, over those sort of 3-4 years, we saw lots of different immersive companies come and make work there, new companies founded that made work there. And Chris's company, Mechanical Thought, was born in the collab factory, first in a scratch night, and then doing its first production in the basement of the collab factory. And it's just a very special place. There were a lot of different companies, a lot of different creatives, all working out that same building, rubbing shoulders with each other, getting to know each other. And I think when you have that kind of creative community, the sparks start to fly. Stuff, it becomes more than the sum of its parts. And sadly, like, the building closed at the start of the pandemic, and I'm not sure it's going to be able to reopen. Obviously, Bertie would be able to speak to that more clearly, and you should have him on your show at some point. He's a really interesting guy.
Done.
Yeah,
let's talk afterwards and start.
Yeah, I can hook you up with him. Yeah. He's worth talking to because he's been behind several different venues in London now, and having Parabolic having a close association with him and collab hugely benefited us in terms of finding places to perform. And he's become a very good friend as well, and he's a terrific fella, Bertie. Really worth a chat. But yeah, I think if the crypt can become even a bit like that, I'd be really proud of it. And certainly being offered opportunities and spaces to perform in relatively cheap prices that didn't, completely blow a hole in your budget. That enabled us, Parabolic, to grow as a company from a little 2-bit operation at the beginning of 2016 through to, well, we're still not that huge, but we've done a lot of work.
Got a
and
good CV.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's enabled us massively, and I think if we can do that for companies that are just starting out now, or companies that have struggled through the pandemic, if we can provide them with a bit of practical support, then I'm here for that. I think we've all got to help each other out. I kind of think uh, every production company that's making immersive theatre, every new show that opens is growing the ecosystem in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we can help each other and support each other and encourage each other, the more that ecosystem will grow, and we'll all benefit from that. If there are people who come and see a Parabolic show, generally speaking, they're not choosing to see a Parabolic show instead of seeing another piece of immersive theatre. They're doing both because they're excited about that kind of work, and there's a lot of capacity there. So yeah, that's what excites me about it.
You mentioned that audiences are sort of kind of trickling back, and things are kind of still shaky in London right now. I wonder if you could give us iris open on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because sitting over here, one, things are very weird here in LA for certain. They feel like maybe they're less weird in New York because New York's more of a theater town, and of course you've got Sleep No More is back, and so Punch Drunk's running. You do have Burnt City opening in London. I'm wondering, but I just don't know what's happening on the ground there. Although what the Doctor Who thing was running, and it feels like stuff is starting to try to come back. But is the audience there? Does it feel comparable to like another year in the short history of immersive at all? These are the thoughts of my questions.
I think it's a weird time. I mean, Chris will be able to shed some light on this as well, I think, from some of his experiences. But certainly from stuff I've seen, it's been a real mixed bag. There have been some shows that just seem to have shows that you would have expected to do really well pre-pandemic have just kind of crashed and burned, or at least that's what it looks a bit like. I know Secret Cinema's Bridgerton closed, or is closing really soon. And it's had a really short run, and there was a lot of expectation on that doing really well. Bridgerton was a hugely popular TV show, but it just doesn't seem to have caught the imagination of audiences in the way that I would expect a secret cinema show to do. However, there have been other shows that have done exceptionally well. I mean, Burnt City's has so far, I think, sold very, very well. But then, like, it's the first sort of Punch Drunk Mask show in London for 6 years now, 7 years, something like that. So I guess you can expect it to do pretty well, certainly at the beginning. We were very fortunate. We put a remount of Crisis What Crisis on last year, and we were supported by the New Diorama Theatre, who are an absolutely fabulous producing theatre in London, and they really took a big risk with us. We'd not done a show with them before, and they basically bankrolled the whole thing at a time when everyone was struggling for money. But it paid off, and we pretty much sold damn near every ticket for that show in the end, and we extended the run by 3 weeks. So that really worked for us. But for every story like that, there's probably another 3 or 4 stories of shows that just haven't done as well as expected. They've had to close early, and we haven't been immune from that either. We just did a run of a brand new thing, and admittedly we only wanted to do a week to test it, but we really struggled to sell tickets for that, and we haven't pushed it very hard because we were really only doing a test a week. But it didn't sell as well as I would have hoped it to our core fan base, and I think a lot of our core fan base are still very worried about COVID and are staying in the house. And I can't really say that's a silly thing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're seeing similar things here. There's shows in LA that would have extended if more people had come through, but at the same time, we can't fault people for not want. I mean, I have a higher threshold on protocol. Like, I didn't go to some of these shows because I was like, well, I know I'm going to feel the social pressure to take off my masks because it's going to be awkward, but I know I can't take off my mask because I've got family to protect. And, the math starts to get too much. You just go like, I'll just watch a movie.
Yeah, it just becomes easier, doesn't it? And I know of some people I've spoken, because we have quite a good relationship with some of the core Parabolic fan base. We get to know people who come to our shows regularly, and I've known some people who have had to stay away because they've got long COVID, or
Yeah.
they've got, as you say, family members that they're trying to protect, and you just can't blame people for that. At the end of the day, you don't want to risk stuff to go and see a show. That's always going to be silly.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with the bigger shows like Bridgerton, where I think there's a lot of audiences are very worried about being in large crowded spaces. But the smaller shows, like Viper Squad by Schematic Theatre, that was supposed to having a much shorter run and has extended and extended again. So I think the smaller companies that can provide a smaller audience capacity seem to be doing quite well. And escape rooms as well still seem to be going quite strongly, which has a similar sort of audience as immersive theatre.
Yeah.
But again, because it's very small groups going in, and also you're going to be with the people that you book with as well. So I think
the pod effect is really effective. Like knowing that you're going to be like, oh, the 7 people who I know, I'm with them and no one else.
Yeah, it's a lot less scary, isn't it? And similarly, if you're looking at the capacity of a show and you see, 400, 500 people, you think, crumbs, if any of those people have got COVID, we could all walk out with it. Whereas if the capacity of a show is 20, 30 people, it just feels less risky, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funky for that to be going on and then see like seas of people going to concerts and not just big festival outdoor events, but like indoor events as well. So it's just it really is strange how every sector of society is at a completely different place mentally. And we've got this still emerging art form, and where it fits in and who it appeals to, it's still just hard to suss. But that's a very good observation about the small groups, Chris. For the people who are coming out, Chris, as a performer, how are people responding to the material?
it's positive. I think particularly after going through more severe lockdown measures over the past few years, being able to get out and then do interactive theatre just feels like a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. And again, recently having done the Resistance Museum show, which we did, and we targeted that as a family-friendly show. And that was also great for seeing families come out, bringing slightly younger children who we don't usually get coming to our shows because it doesn't usually have the right sort of material. And again, there was a lot of excitement of having a day out. So I think for the people who are taking the risk and going out, they're not regretting it.
Let's talk Make, Do, and Mend. Walk us through this season you've got lined up at the Crypt.
So, really, before we sort of started picking up shows from Vault Festival, our intention had been to do a season of shows which were predominantly proven successful shows, so things that we'd run in the past, and a lot of them we'd run at the Collab Factory in the past. There were quite a number of different wartime themed shows by different companies that were all on at the Collab Factory in quick succession back in sort of 2018, 2019. And we wanted to do something that we knew we had faith in the material, and that we weren't going to be worrying about trying to both win audiences back and do brand new shows that we hadn't tested before. We also wanted, theming wise, I think I was keen to try and respond to the feeling of the pandemic. Over here, there was something of that blitz spirit of everybody. We were all stuck in this thing together and all trying to help each other out and get through it as best we could. and it felt like that had some resonance for British people with that wartime experience, and so those two things together really were behind the idea of the season as a whole. But then, of course, what we hadn't predicted and what we didn't know anything about was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And for a little while there, I was sort of looking at the program shows we had and thinking, "Crumbs, is this actually? Is there a risk of this coming across as tone deaf?" But thankfully, the shows that we had programmed were all about ancillary stuff around the war. They weren't directly about the war itself. We have a show for King and Country, which we have run many times in the past, which is about the attempted Nazi invasion of Britain. But we hadn't put that in this season for various reasons. And I think I don't think we could run that show at the moment. I think it's just too close for comfort for what's really going on with people. It just doesn't feel like a fun way to spend an evening right now. But the shows that we do have, and that we started the season with a new thing, the Resistance Museum, that we wanted to test out that idea of going to a museum of alternate history. And then moving through into Illicit Signals Bletchley, which is Chris's show about the code breaking that went on at Bletchley Park during the war. And then we have Line of Fire, which is an immersive murder mystery, basically, which happens to be set during wartime. And then finally, Hidden Figures, which is a show about the unsung heroes of the war, who have largely been ignored by history because they weren't white and male. And I think the stories that we've got there, they seem to resonate with where people are at the moment. I think without crossing over into that territory of being tone deaf to some of the events going on in the world.
I gotta imagine there's a fine line to walk a bit as an artistic director of interactive theater, because you mentioned somebody that was like dead on about the war, or could be interpreted as dead on about the war, isn't a fun night out for folks at the moment, which indeed it wouldn't be. And yet at the same time, I think of the traditional role of an artistic director is to what's relevant right now, right? Like, and so often, like, the mantle is like, well, how can I challenge my audience's expectations? So how do you, and for both of you, like, how do you approach that? The artistic, drive to challenge and engage and get the audience, thinking deeply about work, and also the fact that because it's interactive, it's can hit so much harder because people are participating. Like they're not just observing.
Yeah, I mean, what immersive theatre seems to do best is encourage empathy in people, and I think in each of the shows we've got in this particular season, the focus is very much on what can ordinary people do. I mean, if you look specifically at the folk in Bletchley Park, you've got some pretty extraordinary minds, but they're not in great positions of power necessarily. But we put the audience in the position of doing some of the work that the code breakers at Bletchley Park did themselves, so that they explore some of the techniques that we use to break Enigma. And I think throughout the whole season, really, what we're trying to do is give our audience members the opportunity to have that experience of being the best version of themselves, of stepping up and saying, I can make a difference here, to have some idea of what that feels like. I don't know, Chris, does that sound right to you?
Absolutely. It's all about the people who are the nerds, the people who might be the sort of social outcasts. Certainly not the sort of people you'd think as being a stereotypical war hero, but absolutely, when you look at what they've done and the impact that had on the war as a whole, they absolutely are heroes. But not all heroic actions in war involve violence and bloodshed.
And for the time we're in now, one of the big questions is you see this war going on, out in Eastern Europe, and you think, well, what can I do sitting at home? Where am I in that? What difference can I make? And if we give people even a slight degree of hope that there is maybe something that they can do, that by standing up and speaking out and making their voice heard, however they do that, whether it's through an election or whether it's through a protest or whether it's through sending money or sending letters or whatever, that we're all able to make a difference in some way. If the sort of immersive shows we make can encourage people in that, then I think that's time well spent.
All right. Gentlemen, the current season runs through...
We're running really from now through till the end of September. That's with the option to extend it. So Hidden Figures is the last show up in the season. And it's certainly, when that was on at the Colour Factory before, it was an incredibly popular show. There's a good chance that'll extend beyond its 30th of September current closure date. We also have the option to bring back some of the other shows in the season as well. So I think, definitely till the end of September, possibly longer.
All right. Well, and for those who are coming into London for one reason or another, I would encourage you to also, check out what's going on at the Crypt while you're in town. It's always nice to have that option to catch more than just one show if you're traveling abroad. And I know there's a few people who are traveling abroad in the next couple of months. Mm. Thank you both for coming on the podcast this week, and I'm hoping to hear an update on the Crypt towards the end of the season and see how it's all shaken out.
Definitely, will do. That'll be good.
Thanks for having us. Mm-hmm.
And that's the show this week. Going old school, one interview, one setup. We will not always be doing this super short format, but it is a truncated week because of running off to Without Walls. But there's a lot of fun coming up. There's some really interesting things on the immediate horizon, and we'll tell you about that as soon as we can. It is late on a Thursday as I'm recording this, so you have a super sugared up version of me because I maybe did a bunch of sugar in order to get through the day. But you don't have the early morning ramble coffee Noah, so he'll be back next week. There's a lot going on, so I'm really looking forward to what's happening. Let's do the end of the show bits. The sustaining backers of No Proscenium are Ari Hurston, Chris Wollman, Eric Shamlin, Deborah Robinson, Elaine, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentis, David Bassick, Lonnie Hanson, Mark Baltazar, Sidney Guillory, and Jan Budman. They help us out at patreon.com/No Proscenium, which I really should have said at the beginning when I was thanking our new backers, and now people have just tuned out. No. Anyway, help us out. We need it. We need it. I want to give a big shout out actually to all the folks who answered the volunteer call we put out last week. I think we're gonna put a little bit of a halt at the moment because I got a lot of responses and we're gonna get people doing stuff, but we will be back to that soon enough as we build out more things both at Everything Immersive and at the Institute website. There's just a lot of things to do. And you're probably listening to this while I'm running around San Diego. So it's hopefully going to be a good weekend for all of us. The associate producer of No Proscenium is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. Catherine Yu is the executive editor of the No Proscenium site. And this podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, mixed, blah, blah, yakety schmackety by yours truly. I'm Noah Nelson. And until next time, I'll see you at the show.